Okay, first off, I want all of you to stand up. It's the afternoon, we've had breaks, we've had food, you've been listening to talks, there's stretches going on, I like to see it. Now we already know in this room, 90% of you are developers. So if you're a developer, you need to stay standing up. And if you're not a developer, you can sit down now. All right, the developers, many of the developers have left, some of them have stayed. Now, for those of you sitting down, you might need to stand up again, because I want to know for you, who's responsible for security within your organization? Stand up if you're responsible for security, sit down if you're not responsible for security. Yes, everyone who stood back up, you are all responsible for security. That is the right answer. Sit down, let's get into my talk. So we're going to be talking today about the secure adoption of AI. Because actually, anyone can adopt AI. And many people are adopting AI. But adopting it securely is something slightly different. So my agenda is to talk about what is the problem, then think about what best practice is currently available. I'm going to go into who FINOS is, and I'm hoping no one will know who FINOS is. No one's waving, good. AI readiness. We're going to be talking about the AI readiness framework, and then steps there everyone can start to take, whether you're working in a FinTech space or not. There'll be key takeaways for you. AI is everywhere now. We've heard about it all through today, and all through yesterday, and all through the last 2 years. You can't escape news about AI. From the FinTech space, AI can draw conclusions from huge volumes of data. This is allowing credit scoring and underwriting to occur in ways that has never been possible before. AI can dramatically increase the accuracy of certain pattern recognition. Again, banks love this. Anomaly detection systems are something that banks look at all the time. AI can personalize recommendations. Banks have customers who want personalized recommendations. The human sales agent knows to push one thing that they've been told is important. The AI agent can push any number of things depending on what the profile of the customer is. As soon as you start throwing in AI to these financial components, these financial use studies and case studies, it's actually really important to understand banks have got a lot of personal information on you. And if we want AI to be helping the banks perform their business, AI now has a lot of personal information on you, which is why securing it is really important. But before we can move on to securing it, we need to understand what the models are. You've heard models being talked about all over the place today. And for many of you developers are in the room, you're looking at AI as a way of coding faster, a way of coding better. But AI gets put in, like all those case studies I just talked about, into various different parts of banking and of financial services. You have to use a model to do that, but models are really expensive. Now, I haven't been able to find an updated version of this because DeepSeek turned this model upside down. As you can see, the graph is exponential, all the way from the very foundational model transformer through to the latest GPT models at the top end. It costs more and more money to train a model. These are the models that we're using when we go to ChatGPT, or when we go to Gemini, or when we go to AWS Q. These models are there and available for us, but they take time to train. There's a number of different deployment methodologies as well. So on the far side, you can see option 5, using custom models. This is building those models that costs a lot of money. And on the other end, you've got public API access to someone like ChatGPT, where you can start to use the models that they've already got and the interfaces they've pre-built for you. And in the middle of that spectrum, there's 3 other options as well. One of the previous speakers was talking about fine-tuning the models, so that it's fine-tuned to your own data sets and your own use cases. But it's a really expensive option. It's not quite as expensive as having a custom model, but it's up there. And on the other end of the spectrum again, is having licensed models, adding extra information in to the APIs that is then sandboxed into your environment. If you're using models from somewhere else, Hugging Face is a great example of somewhere where you can pull models from. But do you know who's created that model or what they've trained it with? On the screen at the moment, you can see some training data of someone training an LLM. You can see the steps that they've gone through and whether the user has accepted or rejected the response that the LLM came back with. But you can also see in here people introducing techniques like pseudo that you wouldn't necessarily understand as a user of that model. And these are backdoors that may or may not have been built into any of the models that you pull down from Hugging Face. It's less likely that you're going to find it in the models that you're pulling from OpenAI, but it's entirely possible. And this is one of the things with DeepSeek. DeepSeek came around, 5.6 million to build the model that they then sort of open sourced. And people don't trust the provenance of it. They don't understand whether when they use that model, all of their private data is going to be sent to some server farm in China somewhere. Understanding the provenance of the models and understanding the risks associated with the model that you're choosing is a really important factor. I'm picking on Hugging Face a lot. And it's not because there's a problem with Hugging Face. Hugging Face has got some great security methodologies within it. It's just there's evidence and there's news articles about models that have been found in Hugging Face because it's so commonly used. And they found that there are a number of malicious models embedded into Hugging Face, available for you to pull down without you really understanding and knowing that you're pulling down something that opens up a shell on your machine. JFrog did a study on it and found that not just one instance, but multiple instances of reverse shell execution from just loading the model, not even from utilizing the model and it being asked questions, but just from loading the model was enough to compromise the system. So OWASP has come up with their responsible attack service, their responsible secure AI adoption attack service. It's pretty complicated, but there's some key points. Control and data planes are inseparable, meaning the security models that financial institutions typically, and others, used to employ don't work as well. It's non-deterministic by design, so you might get a different result when you try testing it in non-production systems. Semantic search prioritizes the terms that you give it. So it responds based on the answer, the prompt that you provide to the model, which is different to how searches worked previously and how people have been testing and securing search parameters. All of these things add to quite a large attack surface for something like an AI model. And we see problems emerging in the wild because of this. 30 terabytes of data exposed by Microsoft AI researchers, including secrets, private keys, passwords, and 30,000 internal Teams messages. And the reason for that wasn't anything malicious. There was someone using a storage account and utilizing it in the wrong way when they thought they were uploading data for the models to be trained on instead of storing it somewhere else. TikTok, last year, end of November last year, sacked an intern for sabotaging an AI project. Now, it turns out the intern was doing some really weird things, but the impact that that had on different business units and on teams that were trying to do work was so disruptive. And the intern got sacked for it and is being sued. Microsoft Copilot was oversharing. allowing customers to access sensitive information like CEO emails and HR documents. These are all stories that I've pulled from the news, and these are just some of the biggest, most popular stories that occur. If you start thinking, especially from the financial services space, about what reporting you have to do when there's a breach of data, and if your AI model has access to all of these emails or customer information, how frequently are you going to have to be reporting that to the regulators? So what best practice is available? Well, there's loads of resources. AI has been a popular topic for the last 2 years. And so people have been coming up with lots of different government frameworks and strategies for how to deal with it. Everyone's heard of OWASP, right? They come up with top 10s for nearly everything that you can think of. And they've got at least 4 that I could find for machine learning and AI. NIST, well respected, at least previously, for being a worldwide view of how important security is. We'll see how relevant NIST is over the coming years, but for now, the stuff that they've got there is looked at by the rest of the world. MITRE and Atlas. Utilizing the attack framework, they've built out this repository of potential attacks, which now includes machine learning strategies and prompt engineering. They've updated their definitions of how attackers are going to attack your systems based on this new revolutionary technology of AI. But in the financial services space, there is another new contender. And this is the FINOS Readiness Working Group. FINOS is the FinTec open source foundation. They're part of the Linux Foundation. They embody open source methodologies. They've also identified that there is an impact of AI in financial services. But there's also the positive side of the impact, those use cases that I started off this talk with, and there's the negative side of the impact, because attackers are also using them. AI is so disruptive in business that if you're not using it, there's just as big a challenge by not using AI and seeing all your competitors using it as there is in using it but not securing it properly. And so what FINOS did is they tried to gather as many people together who are using AI in the fintech space to come up with a readiness report and a working model. And Control Plane got involved in that. Control Plane, as a consultancy, typically works with advising large financial services institutions and other enterprises about how to secure cloud native exceptionally well. We work with large banks, we advise them, and we've been asked so many times about all this AI stuff that keeps getting added on that we rapidly upskilled and started to come up with threat modeling for it. AI is a massive space. So we had to limit the scope. We started with high-level threat enumeration, reference architecture using RAG, because when we started the project over a year ago, that was the most important thing. Looking at it now, the threat model has to evolve. And there's always a request for help from people who are using AI in the fintech space to be able to get themselves involved with FINOS to try and build this for everyone. We set the scope. We built some assumptions, reliance upon the existing infrastructure and operational controls, having a system auditor that most financial services would by default have anyway. We excluded from the scope any ethical concerns, which is a massive undertaking. The ethical components of having an AI looking at your personal financial data was outside the scope for this model. There are groups that are working on that. And we also de-scoped any carbon outputs and system costs. To then start taking that into something practical and building a framework that people can use, you need to have a system overview. It comes back to what we've been hearing about today, that systems thinking approach. But when control plane does systems thinking, we then start applying threat modeling on top of it. How many of you are familiar with threat modeling? Excellent. That's really good to hear. Because everyone should be familiar with threat modeling, and everyone should be implementing and actively doing threat modeling constantly throughout the life cycle of their software. And that's what we did here, is we built the model of a system, and then we started doing threat modeling on it. We started identifying the areas where there might be a risk, there might be a threat, and what the threat would be. But you had to limit the application space, because I remember talking to one of my colleagues, and he went, there's so many different ways that this could be applied, there's so many ways that it is being applied that we've seen from our customers. How do we produce a model on all of those things? So we didn't. We produced a model on one thing, and then it started to expand and it started to grow. And we came up with some threats and some controls. Now, you've heard throughout today as well, guardrails being talked about. The guardrails very closely align with those controls that are on the right-hand side of the diagram. Because those are the things, that's the places that you want to have your guardrails, where you want to prevent data leakage, where you want to make sure that you've got system observability built in. This isn't in the LLM model, this is outside of that. And some of the best examples that we saw of it, we have got further down the list. If I can read it. LLM as a judge, CT15. On that side, on that side. This is where you build up a system utilizing LLM models and agents to act as the proxy between the input that's coming in and moving on the way to your actual LLM agent. Checking to make sure that the prompts that are going through to that agent don't breach any of your protocols and rules. And at the same time, the responses coming back from the agent go back through that same proxy, maybe utilizing a different agent, but going back through that same proxy to make sure that the responses that have come through are correct and accurate and not breaching financial regulations. I said I'd make this accessible for everyone, even if you're not in the financial space. And while the FINOS framework is there and the AI readiness framework is there to help financial services organizations accelerate their adoption of AI, there are key lessons that you can think about for everyone. Getting an inventory of your AI assets. I speak to data governance people all the time back in Melbourne, and this is one of the things that they're talking about a lot at the moment as well. Data governance has become a much more important thing now that AI has access to all of your data. So inventory your assets. Create a bespoke threat model tailored to your architecture. There's so many things to consider when you're looking at securing AI. From model selection to what your enterprise operations will look like, what the end user management looks like, and what the model or compute optimization is after you've deployed it. There's lots of things to consider in that, and you're not going to be able to do this in one short 20-minute session with me. We tried to make it a bit simpler, talking about being secure by design, securely developed, securely deployed, and then secure operation and maintenance after it, with some key guidelines of what you might be able to find. There's 2 links that I've got in the notes here, and I'll make the slides available with all of these links. There's more coming. We've already delivered a security reference architecture, which you can download from GitHub as we speak. There's a a readiness report, a governance framework that you can go and review and look at, especially if you're in the fintech space. And while this is the first pass that I've talked about, the second pass is in progress, and there's always a need for more people to contribute to that. It is open source. So if you're working in fintech, consider contributing back some of your experience in that fintech space to the open source community. And for afterwards, there's a whole pile of OSINT here. Lots of different links, lots of different things to look at. And this list is constantly changing. AI is constantly evolving, so you need to stay up to date with what's going on. Cloud Native could help you. Control Plane could help you with that. We're a cloud native consultancy. We do advice and guidance, and we get involved in DevSecOps. So if you need help with it, reach out and speak to me. But otherwise, there's a lot of open source material out there. Go away and look at it. Thank you.